Hello, everyone. Welcome back to BCP 2208 Conflict Resolution. And today we are looking at the value of conflict. This is our second topic in this course unit. And as usual, I'm your facilitator, Miss Linda Nakalawa. So, by way of introduction, I want to remind us that not all conflicts are bad and destructive. For most of us, when we think about conflict, we think about negative things. We look at conflict as something that is harmful, something that should be avoided at all costs. But philosophers like Hegel and Marx, philosophers, first of all, are thinkers or scholars or people that teach us how to think. They look at conflict as a necessary instrument of change and progress. Take an example of Makerere University. Some of the policies that are in Makerere University came as a result of disagreement. Things that we see as good today, beneficial policies, they came as a result of some kind of conflict, maybe between management and teacher and lecturers, or between lecturers and students, or between students and managers. When there is effective conflict resolution, conflict is not all bad. Simmel and Kosa look at conflict as a necessary tool of social integration. Social integration means that two groups will come together. They might clash in the beginning, but then they settle down and merge into each other. And you might actually come up with a larger, more effective group. I'll give an example of Buganda Kingdom. For example, these were different clans that came together. They might have clashed in the beginning, but then they merged into the Buganda Kingdom that we see today. Kosa also says that conflict prevents the social system from becoming so rigid. It exercises some kind of pressure for innovation and creativity. This innovation comes as a result of a group being under pressure to change. So there is no rigidity, there is no inflexibility. The system is not inflexible. So as it changes, there are creative ways that it does the change. Earlier in our topic, in the earlier topic on introduction to conflict resolution, we looked at researchers Hussein and Al-Mamari, and they gave us some definitions. They gave us some ways of looking at conflict, and they also have done some research on the benefits of conflict. They say that it stimulates individuals to work hard. The individual who finds themselves in a conflict situation will call on their abilities, their skills, and their talents. Let me give an example. Someone might be a secretary in an organization. If they come into conflict with their boss disagrees with them about the way that they are doing their work, this person might be forced to explore their talents. They might be forced to go the extra mile, and in that way, they work harder and they find themselves delivering. If there had been no conflict, if it had been smooth sailing all the way, this individual would not have found themselves working harder and therefore bringing out the better side of them. Conflict might also satisfy some psychological needs. Some of us have a need for dominance. We might all have an underlying aggression. We all have egos. And if we come into conflict, for example, I might bring up as a lecturer, I might bring up a topic in class, and then we start to argue and we shout. And in that way, these aggressive urges are released, and it might stop us from actually coming into more conflict. Our egos are exercised, and you say, for me, this is what I think. And you know, that some people's desire for dominance might actually come out and be expressed within a class argument. Conflict also gives productive and creative ideas. For example, this might also lead to benefits for employees. Let me give an example of what is going on between science teachers and the government of Uganda, or teachers in general, okay? For a very long time, the teachers' salaries have been increasing step by step because of the management and the government of Uganda and the teachers' union coming into conflict. Right now, we have the teachers on strike because the teachers' union protects them, okay? And when the teachers' union disagreed with government's decision to increase salaries for only the science teachers by 300%, you might actually see a situation where all the teachers' salaries are going to be increased. So and because government has to look for the money, they have to be more creative, okay? And after their salaries have been increased, then it is assumed that they will be more productive. So in this way, conflict comes up with more creative and productive ideas. The other way that they look at conflict is that it contributes to social change. It ensures the integration of interpersonal dynamics reflecting recent realities and interests. Social change happens when conflict happens. And the rules and regulations, or the way that things are done in societies, it comes to change to reflect people's actual realities. I have had, I have been told that, for example, the Worldwide Catholic Church is looking at, there's a worldwide research going on, okay? And people are giving ideas about how certain things need to change in the Catholic Church, for example. Of course, some things are principles that are not going to be changed, but I think the conversation is about trying to understand the reality of the everyday person. So if there was never any kind of conflict, maybe some of these things would not have come about. In a family, there might be a rule that everyone is supposed to come home at 5 p.m. Okay, but as time goes on, the family might come to a lot of conflict because the 5 p.m. curfew does not reflect the reality. Maybe some people are having classes that go beyond 5 p.m. So as they come into conflict, the family might then sit down and say, okay, how do we overcome this conflict? Let us increase the time for curfew, maybe from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., such that the new rules, the new social order within the family is reflecting the actual reality. Instead of sticking to what we were doing in the past, there is some kind of social change because of a conflict that came up. According to Hussein and company, conflict also facilitates mutual understanding of the problems among the parties in conflicts. It allows the members of the groups to argue and debate their needs within the group. As we clash, as we come into conflict or disagreement, we debate. Everyone brings their point of view, and eventually we will settle on a mutual understanding. Then it also creates unity within each group. When you have two groups that are conflicting, okay, my group and another person's group. Within my group, we shall have to agree with one another. There will be increased unity because we are looking at each other as we are the same, we are in the same group. So we have to cooperate so that we can win the other group. And in that way, the unity within the different groups is increased because we are trying to come to the best possible operation within our group so that we can win against the other group that we are conflicting with or that we are competing with or that we are arguing with. If I put the class into different discussion groups and I say that there is going to be a winner, even if you do not like each other, for that moment, the moment I put you into groups, you are going to start cooperating. You're going to be a unified group if you are functioning as normal individuals anyway, and your group's unity is going to increase so that you can be the winners. The other thing that conflict does is that it inspires creativity. When you find yourselves in conflict, you're all in hot soup, it's going to be a chance for you to brainstorm and come up with effective solutions to the problems that you're facing. Conflict also allows space for people to share and learn to respect each other's opinions. When we have a disagreement, it might continue and continue and continue, but finally, and as we are trying to resolve the conflict, there's an opportunity, for each member to contribute their viewpoint. I listen to you, you listen to me. And because we do this, as we try to overcome the conflict, in future, it becomes a tool for improving communication. I've told you that I am a therapist. When a couple comes to me because they're having a conflict and either their relationship or their marriage is threatened, within my therapy room, they learn ways of each one sharing and each one listening. So it improves their communication skills. And later, they will not have to come back to me to solve the new conflict that comes up, because when they came to the therapist, they learned new tools of conflict resolution and new tools of communication. Conflict also discourages premature group decision making. If somebody comes up with a decision that, you guys, let's go to Wandegea, okay? You might be friends, but people might disagree. Maybe the idea was, let's go to Wandegea and have lunch. But then the class is about to start. Instead of all of you going, some other person might be like, but why do we go all the way to Wandegea when we can have a snack at the canteen? Okay, so instead of making a decision just like that, because of the conflict and difference in opinion, you will think through it and you might decide, okay, maybe not all of us should go to Wandegea because we shall just keep jazzing along the way, and maybe we do not want to eat the things at the canteen. So maybe let one person go, and not to Wandegea, let them go to a nearby supermarket and buy what we need and brings back. We all have the meal and then we are ready for class. Instead of just deciding, if groups never ever came into conflict, then they would always be making decisions that they would regret later. Conflict also allows for the understanding of the concerns of all parties, so that finally, when there is an agreement, the agreement that we come to is going to be for the benefit of everybody's interest. If people come into conflict, if people express their different points of view, if there is some kind of disagreement, then all parties get an opportunity. If the system is working well, that is, all parties may get an opportunity to express what they feel, and eventually the agreement that they come to is going to be for the benefit of all parties. You might be watching the conflict between Rwanda and Congo now, and East African presidents have gathered in one place, and all parties are given an opportunity, ideally, to express their point of view. And hopefully, finally, the agreement that they come to will be something that benefits the Rwandese, will be something that benefits the Congolese, will be something that benefits even people that were not in the conflict to start with. So everybody is heard, all their concerns are heard, and the final decision is one that benefits everybody. When Makerere University staff and maybe students disagree, and then the vice chancellor comes in or council comes in, they are going to call all the parties to the round table, and there's going to be a discussion between student representatives and staff representatives and management representatives. And if things are functioning as they should be, the final decision is going to be one that benefits the interests of all these parties. Then there is Philly, and he also has summarized into 4 the positive effects of conflict. He says that according to Philly, having a conflict is going to diffuse more serious conflict. A smaller conflict is going to diffuse the potential for a more serious conflict. For example, games. I'll give an example of Buganda Kingdom. We've been having Ompira Gwebika, the inter-clan football matches. These clans would have been fighting each other and not liking each other, and coming to physical conflict. But when they have the games, okay, they can liberate, they can bring out their tensions, and it might actually become something that is entertaining. And what would have been a serious conflict is settled on a football field. And we shout and we support our teams, and eventually we might actually get to even become friends. When we have football matches or sports matches between schools, okay, the schools have been living side by side. Yes, it might disintegrate and it might become a fight. But if it is a fair game, the energies are released in a more productive way. When we have small disputes within maybe a couple, you argue about cups and plates, okay? You might have an opportunity to let out energies that if they kept on building up, they might have become larger fights, larger conflict. If a husband comes home late and the wife is like, hey, Tata Sam, at this time, where are you coming from? And they argue about it, it releases certain energy. But if Mama Sam keeps quiet, another time Tata Sam comes late, Mama Sam keeps quiet. Over time, if they do not talk about it at the point that it has happened, over time, they might end up in a big fight that even involves the neighbors and the newspapers and red paper, and the marriage breaks. Yet, if they had had that disagreement and talked about it at the point that it happened, then maybe they would not have had a larger fight. It also stimulates a search for new facts or resolution. The conflict resolution process may help in clarifying the facts and search for mutually acceptable solutions. Again, this comes back to what we saw earlier, that when you bring the conflicting parties to a round table and each of them is talking about what happened, they might actually realize that, we are actually arguing on the same side. Maybe we did not realize the facts as they were. You mean this is actually what happened? And in that process, as the facts come to light, the conflict is diffused, and we might come up with a mutually acceptable solution. Okay, as we have gone through, let me give an example. A conflict between students and lecturers about online studying. For example, we have come up with a new resolution, a new solution that we are trying out because people are doing internship and then there is online class. We have had very many discussions because we did not at first agree on how we are going to go about it. And even this idea of me recording a lecture and sending it for people to watch in their own time, and later maybe we shall have a discussion about it, or they will write their questions or be able to watch the video over and over. We are trying to come up with new ways to resolve that impasse, that issue of class has to go on, internship also has to go on. It increases, again, Philly also says that it increases group cohesion and performance. When people are in different groups, their allegiance to the group is strongly reinforced. When we have groups that are competing, within each group, people increase their efforts, people increase their unity so that they can be the winners, even if you were not agreeing in the past. I saw on TV, not on TV, but on social media, maybe people were competing between BCP and OGSI during Psychology Week. People came up with different ways that they are going to portray their group as the winner. People had BCP t-shirts and I don't know what. It was really, really creative. So within the group that is competing with another group, there is more cohesion, there is more creativity, there is better performance. No one can afford to be lazy because there is this conflict, there is this other group that you are competing with. Philly also says that it is an assessment of power or ability of each group. Okay, when people come into conflict, they might even come to blows. Okay, they actually fight it out or they argue it out, and at the end, everyone is sure that group A is better than group B. So next time when group B wants to pick a fight, they will remember the earlier conflict that they had, and they're like, I go slow on them. Okay, people are watching on the sidelines and they are trying to see Russia and the Western Bloc, which is stronger. At the end of the conflict, we shall probably have a clear winner, and then the people that have been shown as weaker, they will know what to do with that information. When neighbors quarrel and argue and fight, people are watching to wait and see who is the winner. And from that point on, it is clear the power and ability of each group. The winners, they get maybe bragging rights that, yeah, we are the stronger group. The losers, they also get an assessment of how weak they are, and they go back to do their homework so that they can do better. So the power or the ability of each group is clearly assessed after the conflict, depending on the winners and the losers. Okay, so we were looking at the value of conflict. And I think you can see from this discussion that conflict is not always negative. It might actually come up with some positive resolutions. It might come up with some positive ways that it's not only going to be destructive, it might come up with it might come up with some positive outcomes. So that is it for the value of conflict.